Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tat Savitra Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. अस्तो मा सद्गम्य तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्योर्मामृतं गम्य ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहि तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहि ॐ शान्ति 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 Today we are going to look at some of the stories about Rishi Vashiht. Okay. I'm sure you are all familiar with the names, and there are countless stories. Okay. So we're going to touch upon some of them at least. So divine Brahma, we all know, created the world long ago. Then in order to establish the rule of law, he created 7 sages, which are called Saptarshi. Sapt means 7. So 7 sages who were shining with the brightness of the sun. In fact, all of them were kindness incarnate. They knew all the Shastras, and these 7 are Rishi Mariichi, Rishi Atri, Rishi Angiras, Rishi Pulastya, Rishi Pulaha, Rishi Kratu, and Rishi Vasishhtha. Let me repeat the names again. Mariichi, Atri, Angiras, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, and Vasishhtha. They were righteous because they were born of the mind of Brahma. They were also called Sapt Brahmas. They are also called Manasputra. Putra means offspring. Manas is from the mind. So Manasputras of Brahma, and also called Ayonij. Ayonij means they were born from the mind, not from the womb. Ayonij. Among these Saptarshis, the immortal Vasishtha is the most famous. He was the royal priest to the great emperors of this great land, Bharat. He helped them to rule righteously and bring about great progress in this land. In fact, even the Devatas, they sought Vasishtha's help and his advice. This really shows the greatness of the sage. His great qualities can be understood if we try to know the meaning of his holy name. Vasishtha. Vasishtha means great. a person who shone with unparalleled brightness, a person who has conquered desire, anger, jealousy, pride, all these negative tendencies. Then you can imagine that can there be any weakness in such a person? As soon as he was born, the knowledge of all the Vedas, Shastras, music, and other arts was revealed to him. The most secret and not easily obtainable knowledge of the self was mastered by him. And that's why he became an ocean of knowledge. He was considered the most sacred and a person to be worshipped by one and all. Though he became all-knowing and powerful, he never became proud. He also led a very simple life. He had a son by the name of Rishi Shakti. Rishi Shakti had the son, which we are familiar with, Rishi Parashar. And as we learned last week, Rishi Parashar had the son, Rishi Vyasa. And Rishi Vyas had the son, Shukdev. And Shukdev never got married, did not have any children. So this is the lineage of Rishi Vashiht. Rishi Vashishtha did not have any assigned duty because he was a Brahma Rishi. Still, he chose the world as his field of activity. Why? Because he was interested in the welfare of the human beings on earth. Jan Seva, Jan Kalyan. And he very much liked the lovely, peaceful valley in the Meru mountain. And he got an ashram built in its sylvan surroundings. His ashram was exquisitely beautiful and attracted everyone who happened to go to it. In fact, the Devatas often visited that ashram, and other rishis too. There were trees which bent their branches with flowers and fruits all the year round. It appeared as if the trees were competing with one another. They grew taller and taller, gave out more flowers, fruits than the others. Their tops seemed to touch the sky. The leaves and flowers dropped by these trees made a soft bed around the ashram. And it appeared so colorful. Thousands of creepers which twined around tall trees completely covered the trunks and made wonderful designs as they creeped up the trunks. and thousands of birds, both big and small, flew around freely, singing sweetly. And even the gentle animals, like the deer, leaped about with confidence. They felt very safe in this environment of the ashram. The entire place appeared as holy as the master of that ashram, Rishi Vashiht. A number of holy men made the ashram their home, and they decided to do their tapasya and be blessed by this great Rishi Vashishtha. So a number of small hermitages were built around the main structure in order to accommodate those holy people. And they were engaged in chanting the holy Vedas, discussing the Shastras, performing pujas, yajnas, tap, and also giving charity to the needy. Besides helping themselves in becoming purer, they were engaged in doing good in the world. There was a divine cow by the name Shable in Vasishtha's ashram. In fact, the chief of the Devatas, Devendra, had given the cow to Rishi Vashishtha, taking into account Vasishtha's great qualities. And everyone felt happy when they looked at that cow, and they start calling that cow Nandini. Nandini means one who makes others happy. And Nandini was the daughter of the divine Kamdhenu, which you are familiar with. Kamdhenu had great strength. We all know how invincible Kamdhenu is. And this Nandini will give Vasishtha everything he needed in order to propagate and sustain righteousness in the world. And that was the purpose of the divine cow there. Every yajna, various types of yajnas, they were held in the ashram of Rishi Vashishtha with Nandini's help. All the activities of the ashram were looked after, managed entirely by Rishi Vashishtha's wife, Arundhati. She was a great tapaswani. She had all the great qualities befitting the wife of the great sage. Even today, after the marriage, in certain parts of India, the couple seeks the blessings of Arundhati, looking up into the sky. Everyone in and around the ashram felt that they were living under the care of their own parents, and this was made possible by the power of their tapasya. And Arundhati's love and Shable's bounty, everyone in the ashram was happy and contented. One time, Emperor Manu of the solar line visited Rishi Vashisht's ashram because they used to get a lot of visitors. So Emperor Manu, he placed flowers and fruits at the sage's feet and took his blessings. Vashisht was very happy to see the righteous king. After the usual exchange of courtesies, the king said, Brahman, you are a great Brahm Rishi. You are righteous. It is my desire that you be the royal priest to our clan and show us the way. By doing so, we expect you to help us bring about the maximum welfare of our subjects and establish perfect rule of law in our empire. Because kings often had a guru who would show them the right way. To be the royal priest, a person was expected to have certain qualities. He must have mastered the dharma, give the king advice from time to time in the administration of the country, law, and justice. Rishi Vashisht knew that he was qualified in every respect to be the royal priest. So he said, so be it. King was very happy and he returned to his land contented. So in order to discharge his functions as a royal priest, he was expected to have attained a very high standard in every aspect of religion, dharma, administration, etc. He must be faultless in speech and action. He must be righteous. He must have the capacity to pilot the ship of state in times of a catastrophe. And he was supposed to help the king to perform yajna. He should also teach the art of warfare to the members of the royal family and the science of administration, geography of the land, or even the various kings in the different parts of the land. So some of the rishis, they are scholar, well versed, and so was Rishi Vashishtha. But he always wanted to live a simple life. He never wanted to live in the palace. In the outskirts of the city, that's where he lived. For this very reason, it's said, Ved Vid Vidvan Brahmano Rashtra Gopaha Purohita. The royal priest has been given a pride of place in the scheme of things in a land. He was considered the protector of life and property of the land. He was to observe and try to find solutions even to the most ticklish of problems arising during the course of administration. So under the guidance of Rishi Vashishtha, the kings of the solar clan shone as bright as the sun. And their rule was as pleasant as the moonbeam to their subjects. They say that there was no pain, misery, or want in their empire. And Emperor Dilip was one of the greatest in that line. Emperor Dilip had a queen, Sudakshina. Both of them were righteous. But one thing really worried them, that they had no children to continue the solar line. And one day the emperor and his queen came to Vasishtha's ashram to find a solution to their problem. They made obeisance to the sage, and sage welcomed them and asked, what is the problem? So when they told him, he suggested that I'll do a yajna for you. And as a result, the royal couple got a son, and he was named Raghu. So Rishi Vashisht's advice helped the royal solar family to avert a possible disaster. And Emperor Raghu ruled righteously for a number of years, and after him, King Aj. His son ascended the throne. And Rishi Vashishtha used to visit the king only when there was urgency. And most of the time he would be in his ashram engaged in tapasya and study and teaching his disciples. Once in his ashram, a king by the name of Kaushik, and another name for that king was Vishwarat. He came to see him. He was returning home from a military campaign. He made obeisance to the sage and said, "Oh, great sage, I'm returning from a successful military campaign. I came here to have your darshan and be blessed." Rishi Vashisht was very much impressed by the king's reverential attitude, and he gave the king a few suggestions as to how to rule well. The sage decided to entertain the king and his men and said, "Rajan, you are my guests for the day. Kindly have lunch in the ashram and have some rest before you leave for your capital." The king was surprised, and he asked the sage in disbelief, "O revered sage, where are you going to get food enough for my men in this ashram? You'll be putting the inmates of the ashram to unnecessary inconvenience. It is my great fortune to have had your darshan and blessings. May your blessings be on me. Serving food for so many people may be a big burden on you." But Rishi Vashisht pressed the king to accept his hospitality. Rishi Vashisht and his wife Arundhati said, "Mata Shable Ayahi." So that means, "Mother Shable, please come here." To the surprise of the king and his people, the divine Shable came and stood before the holy couple. At Vashishtha's request, the divine cow created delicious food, items of various types in a matter of minutes. And everyone was surprised beyond belief. The sage entertained the king and thousands of his soldiers. And everyone was feeling extremely happy. That king thought, this divine cow satisfies all that her possessor desires. Why shouldn't I, the emperor, have it for myself? He came to the sage and expressed his desire. He promised to offer thousands of great cows in return for Nandini. But the sage did not agree to part with the divine cow. The king's wicked desire became uncontrollable, and he decided to take the cow by force. He asked his soldiers to drag the cow away. Still, Rishi Vashisht stood calmly and without protesting. And Nandini became furious at the king's ingratitude and arrogance. She gave a strong kick at the soldiers dragging her. They flew in the air, came down heavily on the ground, dead. Nandini came to the sage and said, has great Vashisht abandoned me? Kim ham parityakt Vasishten Mahatma? What mistake I have made? In reply, Rishi Vashisht said, Mother, I have not given you up. The king is trying to drag you by force against my will. You are omnipotent and you can protect yourself. Please go ahead. When sage gave his consent, then Nandini began to act. She just moved very loudly. When she moved, countless soldiers came out of her limbs and began to fight with the king's soldiers. In the early part of the battle, the king seemed to have the upper hand, but finally his army was totally routed. And in order to save his life, the king had to take to his heels. Rishi Vashisht would have destroyed everyone, including the king, but out of kindness he showed mercy to the king and his people. When the king reached the palace, he began to ponder over his humiliating defeat. He felt very sad at having run away from the battlefield. He began to think about the ways and means of defeating Rishi Vashisht. He realized that Rishi Vashisht had terrible strength derived from tapa. And he knew that only Lord Shiva was capable of granting him that strength required to subdue Vasishtha. So he gave his kingdom to his son, retired to the slopes of Himalayas, began to perform tap to please Lord Shiva. After years of severe tap, succeeding in pleasing Lord Shiva granted him powerful weapons Now the king was beaming with confidence, and he came again to the ashram of sage Vasishta with the sole intention of taking revenge on him. On reaching the ashram, he began to use the divine weapons one by one on Vasishta. But Rishi Vashisht's Brahmadand. Brahmadand is a piece of grass actually, used by a holy person while performing Sandhya Vandan. That Brahmadand swallowed all the powerful weapons. And the sage had invoked all the great power of his tap and invested it on the Brahmadand. And all the weapons of that king's became powerless. Now the king realized that his power was quite insufficient before the great power of Rishi Vashisht's tap. And this made him resolve to go to the slopes of the Himalayas, again to perform tap, to acquire power equal to that of Vasishta. Rishi Vashisht could have killed the king, but he did not do it because he had mercy, compassion. During the course of his severe taps, the king gave up desires, jealousy, arrogance, and also other bad qualities and attained the status of a Brahma Rishi like Vasishta. He succeeded in winning the world for himself, became a beloved of the three worlds, and came to be called Vishwamitra. So this king, with the help of the tapasya, became Rishi Vishwamitra. He became so great that the invincible Gayatri mantra was revealed to him. And he became its drashta, the composer. So in this way, we can see the Rishi Vashisht's great qualities, such as mercy and goodness. But on the other hand, a lot of power from the tapasya helped a human being acquire the status of a Brahma Rishi. Another great king of the lunar line, fortunate enough to get the services of Rishi Vashisht as the royal priest. Thareo Arani was the king's name. He is also called Nibandha. He had a son by the name of Satyavrat. Satyavrat was arrogant. Because he was in the royal family, he thought he could do anything. He thought he was beyond the law of the land. He would even kidnap the girls of marriageable age. When the king knew about his son's wicked acts, he punished him before Vasishta. And as part of the punishment, he was sent to the forest. And Rishi Vashisht watched all this in silence. Rishi Vashishtha's silence made him realize that the king punished him at the instance of the royal priest. And he became furious. And in order to take revenge on the sage, he killed a cow belonging to the sage's ashram and even ate its flesh. So, in this way, kidnapping girls of marriageable age, killing a cow, eating its flesh, these three sins entitled him to be called Trishanku. And I'm sure some of you have heard this name, Trishanku. So that means a person who committed three terrible sins. And as the days rolled, Trishanku's anger against the sage increased. And it was during this time that the father, Nibant, passed away. There was a terrible famine in that land. People began to suffer for lack of food and water. And in order to save the people from the natural calamity, Rishi Vashishtha took over the administration of the country. He wanted to give the kingdom back to Trishanku for administration, but only after he becomes good, only after he cleans his sins. But it was not to be, because he continued to nurse his hatred towards Rishi Vashishtha. He always thought that sage is the one who sent him to the forest. The sinner king Trishanku, or the prince Trishanku, approached the sage and said one day, "I must go to heaven with this body. Please help me." Rishi Vashisht knew that it was a desire that ordinary mortals can never fulfill. He refused to comply with the king's request. Trishanku was angry. Then he went to Rishi Vashisht's sons and expressed his desire and sought their help. And they also flatly refused to help him, because they didn't want to do anything which their father refused to do. So Trishanku was furious, and again he behaved badly. He used bad words about the sage. And then he was cursed, and he became a Chandal. And continuation of this story goes that Trishanku finally has a son, which you all know, Harishchandra. And that son was a great king. He was ruling over his kingdom with righteousness. Harishchandra never swerved from the path of truth. In fact, he was called a Satyavadi Harishchandra. And his royal priest was also Rishi Vashishtha. So you can see that Rishi Vashishtha not only helped the sadhus, the tapasvis in his ashram, but a lot of royal kings, whoever wanted his help, he helped them. In fact, he had thousands and thousands of disciples, teaching them. In fact, we are all familiar with that story, that his services as the royal priest was enjoyed by King Dashrath also. King Dashrath, he was ruling from Ayodhya. And King Dashrath also part of that solar dynasty. When he did not have any children for a long time, he was very much worried about the continuation of the royal line of kings. And Rishi Vashicht is the one who advised him to do that Putreshti Yagya. And outcome of that Yagya was that they were blessed with 4 sons. And once Dashrath was in his court, sage Vishwamitra, the same Vishwamitra, now he is a Brahm Rishi, he came to visit him. And after the usual welcome and exchange of courtesies, the sage said, "O great king, I'm going to perform a great yagya, and I would like you to send Prince Ram to protect my yagya." First, Dashrath refused to send Ram to the forest, but Rishi Vashisht is the one who intervened and said, "O king, Vishwamitra is all powerful. But he has come to you asking for your son for his own welfare. Send Ram with him." So Dashrath had great faith in Vasishhtha and his words. So he agreed to send Ram to the forest with Vishwamitra. Vasishtha's foresighted advice helped Ram acquire powerful weapons also from Vishwamitra. And we know that later on, a number of terrible Rakshas were killed by Shri Ram. He also relieved Ahalya of her husband's curse. All these were possible only because of great Brahm Rishi Vasishta. We'll stop it here, and next week I will continue with some other stories about Rishi Vasishta and the Kurukulan also. Because Rishi Vasishta not only lived for a few years, he's like as I said, he's a son of Brahma, invincible. But you can see the great qualities of compassion, mercy, ocean of knowledge, but at the same time, lot of power also. Both sides, power and compassion. So we'll continue with this next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you.